We just want to take turns asking questions, guys. I'll just do number one. There's 5 questions.
Because I never grew up dreaming of being a professional babysitter. That's a joke. As an owner or director, doesn't always seem reasonable. Many of them seem very unreasonable, right, Polly? And so Mr. David's going to kick me off because we've got 1 minute left. So, hey, thanks everybody. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I've got some great students going through a director's certification in Colorado. And one of the assignments is to interview a director. And so what I thought would be what a great platform to do that today in this feature. So welcome everybody.
We just want to take turns asking questions, guys. I'll just do number one. There's 5 questions.
Exactly. I was going to say there are 5 questions, so we'll just kind of
go. Okay. So I'll just ask the first one. Tell us about your philosophy on leading and managing an early childhood care and education program. So your philosophy.
Leading and managing, I just got off the phone call just moments ago with a parent with a very unique set of circumstances. Her little guy, Jay, has some very unique abilities and disabilities. And I tackle that conversation with this mom in the same way that I lead and manage our program. And so I think number one, your philosophy or our philosophy is one that encompasses all of these needs, addressing, we're in the business of tiny human tamers. Is that right? Tiny human tamers? Yeah, that's right. And so when leading an organization of early childhood professionals, early childhood intro professionals, right? From 16 that have been babysitting since they were 11 to those with their master's degree in early childhood. This is such a people business. And I think it's really important when you're leading and managing this kind of early childhood community. The more situations that you encounter, the more prepared you are going to be to address them. Leading by example, leading with a huge heart. Teachers in this field that stick around, they wear their heart on the outside. They wear their heart on their sleeves. And so surrounding yourself with compassionate people in this field isn't necessarily a tough thing, but then finding administration and leadership that's equally compassionate and good with people. Here's the challenge when it comes to leading in this field is that most people that enter this field, they do so because they've got a heart of gold, right? They've got this huge heart for children and they're oftentimes really good with children, but that doesn't mean they're good with big people. And so when you're talking about working with parents, when you're talking about working with staff that at some times appear they don't want to be there, right? Those are the challenges that you have with, and so managing little people and managing big people, there's huge difference between the two.
So you're saying that you need to be flexible and you learn from your experiences because you have unique experiences with unique people every day. So you need to be flexible and you learn from each situation every time, whether you handle it correctly or not. You learn from that because everyone is unique.
Yep, that's correct. And there's going to be a lot of or not. And so that's a great point. There's a lot of or not because most directors and owners are, again, big hearts and they're great with working with little people. So those or not experiences help shape you, whether it's a parent or a staff member or a child. So leading by example, recognizing what the pulse of our industry, the pulse of your work family is so important.
Your philosophy comes from your core. So what would be your core values that would attribute to your philosophy, that would build your philosophy?
Yeah, serving the kids, serving our children, our community of children, serving our families, being open to new ideas. These are things that are at my core. This parent that I talked to with her child who qualifies for our school district preschool program, but it's just not going to meet her needs. So she's looking for something very unique outside of that. And, something that I told her was, I said, we haven't done this before, what she's proposing. I said, but I love this conversation. That comes from the philosophy of serving children, of serving our community, of growing. As an owner and as a director, I want to continue to grow. And what I don't want to do is think for a moment that I've got everything figured out.
So it sounds like you're all for being inclusive, and you're handling a new situation. It sounds like maybe that you haven't done before. So in doing that, you're trying to have a more inclusive program.
Absolutely. All about having an inclusive program, but you also, and I said, but, did you hear that? And you also have to recognize what your abilities and limitations are, because we all have them. We have them as teachers. We have them as programs. So my program is only as great as my teachers in my program. So if I'm looking at Miss Kaya's classroom and I have a parent that says, hey, do you care for children with special needs? And my child is 3.5 years old. Immediately, Kaya comes to mind, and I go, I would love to have this conversation with you to find out if our program can meet your child's needs.
What have you found to be the most useful skills and knowledge you acquired while taking the college courses and attending professional development?
This is where your college professors would love for me to tell you how they created me. They created all these philosophies. They gave me all this amazing knowledge that I was able to bring into this workplace. I remember a couple of assignments in my early childhood college courses that I took. I remember a couple of professors and instructors that made some really impactful impressions on me. I graduated with a master's degree from the School of Hard Knocks, like so many others that are running a childcare center. Let's recognize that most childcare directors and owners, they came into the program probably without a bachelor's degree, probably without an associate's degree in early childhood, and they became passionate about caring for children. They became passionate about early childhood education, and then they got really good. They got so good that they go, you know what? I feel like I could help and support other people. And so they became an assistant director, or maybe they took some courses and they became a director, and maybe then they decided to go out, branch out on their own and become an owner of a program. Their experience from day one in the classroom until they're in a position where maybe they're an owner, director, that is what molded them. With all my respect for those in the professional education field, I think that my skills and knowledge from taking early childhood courses, although that made an impact, this is a street business. I mean, you learn every day in the classroom, working with children, working with great teachers, and working with poor co-teachers. Because even the teachers that aren't great, they teach you a lot. I really believe that where early childhood professionals are going to gain their skills and knowledge, it's in a program that's a healthy program, in a healthy early childhood program with great philosophies, with great support for their teachers, and those that will recognize work family members, staff members that want to grow. The few assignments that I vaguely remember do not match up to the few impressions that were made upon me by others that, have decades of early childhood experience, just like the impressions that you have by your families and the kids and the parents that you work with.
If you had a skill that you would hope more directors or more people coming into early childhood education would either learn and or obtain, what skill would the most important one be for you running a center?
Leading by example and being good with people. Being able to supervise it is a huge challenge, right? Think about a class full of 3-year-olds supervising 23-year-olds. That's a huge challenge. Many of them rely on you to do a lot of their thinking, but managing then 20 adults that do not rely on you to do their thinking, that's a bigger challenge. Huge attribute to being successful at that. Being humble leadership, being able to admit you made a mistake. I'm happy to point out someone's mistake, and I'm just as happy to admit my own, that, you know what, I've done that. I continue to make that mistake. And together, we'll just keep reminding each other and we'll get better. We'll try to minimize some of those. So our centers they both run at about a 75 child capacity. And so there's a lot of logistics with that. But I think there's probably other programs that are similar to my size, similar to 75, that run with less technology. They run with less micromanaging of schedules and childcare ledgers and those kind of things, that I'm certain they're extremely successful. For me, it's super important that someone that's managing and directing a center as large as ours is good with numbers, can handle spreadsheets. They can be resourceful, whether it's YouTube University or a quick Google search, that they could be problem solvers. I mean, my background was in sales, and then that developed into working with companies and doing some employee benefits and doing some corporate training. And all of that absolutely helped prepare me for this role, because I never grew up dreaming of being a professional babysitter. That's a joke. Back to business. Yeah, having yourself or your business partner with some good background in a little bit of finance, a little bit of business, a little bit of supervising people. You know, my wife, Kim, her experience and strengths are in the classroom, and then mine was with that business. So that gave us a good opportunity for success.
And I think one of the skills there as well is, as you say, everybody has their strengths, is being able to recognize those and being able to put them in charge or lead them in what they're good at.
Delegating to your weaknesses is really important as well. Recognizing those strengths you have in your organization, and then finding those that are willing and able to accept that delegation is really important. So if you're not good at being organized, have someone on your team that's good at organization that you can delegate. I can continue to work to surround myself with other individuals that are going to contribute. Then you're going to have a successful organization.
But what would you tell people in this class who don't have somebody within close to be their mentor or somebody like that? Like, how do you find resources? How do you find somebody that would be a good mentor to be a director or something like that in your county or somewhere else?
No matter what center you're working at, you're going to know whether there's people there that you want to follow, that you're willing to allow them to lead you, right? So find someone that you look up to. For some, they might be a little bit hesitant trying to break that ice, but just ask them for some mentorship. Ask someone that's in your life, in your work life, that you admire, you respect, and ask them for guidance. Seek out people that you would like to follow in some of their footsteps. Yeah. So I think number one, getting out of your comfort zone is critical. Once I did, I started to realize what value there really was in local resources, more so local than state and national. I feel like your local resources, which in our case might be our early childhood council, are reaching out to that national resources and state and bringing those in. So for me, working closely with PCF, parents of children's partnerships of children's and families, as well as licensing, as well as our county. And over the last 18 years, it has, my local resources has hit some highs and hit some lows as far as being a great partnership. And local resources have provided us with all kinds of, especially in the wake of COVID, grant opportunities, as well as training opportunities, funding.
What about policies
programs
and laws that you have to follow? So the policies, like licensing requires you to do certain things, the state does. those policies that affect, how does that affect your daily operations and how you do your child center?
For many years, I did not immerse myself into the licensing rules and regs. It wasn't until necessity said, oh my gosh, I really need, maybe I got a violation on some kind of a policy. I'm like, well, I didn't know that. And then I've just buried myself into the rules and regs. And so if advice to a new director would be to do that, get into 701 and 702, which is our rules and regs, the administrative guides, our health rules and regs, and read it cover to cover. Polly, if you haven't read it to cover, you're walking in my footsteps, but eventually you got to open that book and read it literally cover to cover. It's great evening reading. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that. And so I feel like knowing the rules and regs forward and backwards, and you can do this where you can learn it better than your licensing specialist. And that's a good thing. Becoming the expert in your business when it comes to rules and regs, navigating those in childcare does not always seem fair as an owner or director, doesn't always seem reasonable. Many of them seem very unreasonable, right, Polly? And so just being a master of your own trade is really important. Knowledge is very powerful, especially when you're working with local officials. Know your business, know it better than anyone.
The next question is, how do these policies hinder your business? And you've kind of touched on that already when you're talking about, some of them don't seem reasonable or fair.
Right.
Are there any that have actually helped you that you feel has made your child center a better place for children in your families and for your staff? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of rules and regulations that are set there to also help us be successful. Again, so learning what those are, knowing that you need 30 square feet per child for 2.5 to 13 is really important. Understanding how to measure a classroom properly, to taking advantage of thresholds in the classroom, because you can gain 2.5 feet and you can gain that 12th child to help your center be more successful and more profitable. So to create healthy dialogue with your licensing specialist is really important. Instead of just waiting for them to come around every 11 months or once a year and going, oh my gosh, is there a Mason County vehicle outside? Did anybody see one out there? It's white with red decals. That's a terrible way to live. It really is. And a lot of programs, those are unhealthy programs that live that way. So certainly there's a lot of regulations in there that one could say are hindering. And we're in a very litigious society. Everybody knows that. But the regulations create a tremendous amount of administrative work. And that administrative work takes, from an administrator standpoint, a lot of the heart out of what we want to do. A lot of directors want to get in those classrooms. They want to support their teachers, rock some babies. They want to say hi. They want to pet some backs. They want to pick up a little toddler and hold them for a minute because they're upset. But how do we do that and meet all these regs? That can be hindering. So then you just got to work really smart, and you got to outsmart the system. You got to be smarter than everybody else in your trade, whether it's hiring people that are smarter than you, which that's always my goal. And I feel like I've hit several of those nails on the head. Yeah. Being more efficient, being able to manage your time better. That's probably one of the biggest downfalls of a director, is managing their time, because they'd rather go into a classroom than work on their budget.
How have local, state, and national policies and resources hindered your ability to lead and manage your program?
Slow it down. Don't be in a rush to sign an ROI, a report of inspection. Ask questions and slow down the process, right? Because you might get an email that says, I need this signed in 24 hours. If you don't have all your questions answered in 24 hours, slow it down. You should be entitled to be able to have conversation about certain things. And I mean, granted, we have 3 new licensing specialists here currently in Mason County, and they're all learning. We're all still learning. And you might have things on your report of inspection that shouldn't be there. Slow it down, ask questions, find a mentor, a director, an owner that has more experience than you, so that you can bounce those ideas off on. So yeah, find find a mentor in the business or someone else that hopefully has greater experience that you can bounce some ideas off of. Could be really important to slow down and minimize the restrictions sometimes that and limitations and challenges that licensing or the local government and regulations might put on you.
Yeah, and Paul asked in the chat, he said, and the lack of funding a hindrance? And I think you're kind of touching on that too, that until COVID, there wasn't really much of any federal funding. Do you believe that there is going to be more after COVID? And now that we've kind of dwindled down from the quarantines, going from 2 weeks to 10 weeks, going from vaccinated people not needing to quarantine, all these new laws where essentially now, unless all of your kids test positive and the day of, it shuts down a room. But now the PHEL or the funding that was paying small businesses money to pay their workers so they could stay out and not lose a paycheck. Do you think that there ever will be any more federal funding for centers?
Yeah, I think there will. I think that before COVID, childcare funding was like college scholarships, that unless you went out and looked for it, you didn't realize how many scholarship opportunities were out there. And so many scholarships went unfunded because people didn't go out there and apply for them. So I believe that, there's always been funding opportunities out there. Colorado, years ago linked it to quality through Colorado Shines. There's hoops that you can jump through to get funding before COVID. And I do think that that's really important, because from a private childcare center, the more funding, the more resources, the more you can support your childcare community. One of the many things that COVID did is bring the importance of childcare to the forefront.
All right. How can I use policies and resources to grow as a leader and manager of an early childcare and education program?
To be able to recognize people, this field, our teachers that wear their heart on their sleeves, they need those hugs. They need those attagirls. They need appreciation. And so as someone that is a little bit more of a fix-it mindset, I need to surround myself with some Care Bears, have a good communication tool, have a good way to communicate with your staff, right? And that's not via email. Like, email is a thing, but have a way that you can speak to them, that you can send a text message, but have a way that you can express what's going on when they need to. When a staff asks me a question, I'm sure I see someone intend to get back and I don't, and I'm sure I hurt feelings, but I try to respond with genuine, concern for the issue that they have. If you're running a democracy within a childcare program where everybody has a vote, you will get voted out. And so transparency is good when it's appropriate.
Well, thank you again.
All right, everybody. Well, hey, Mr. David's going to kick me off because we've got 1 minute left. So, hey, thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. I guess David and I will maybe set up interview number 2. So look for that.